Anyone can fall under the influence of bad people. The most important thing is to understand as early as possible who is bad and who is not. Many people use their high official position to manipulate the feelings of other people, and in my opinion, these are the worst people, because they destroy other people's lives. Hi, I'm Barry Scott, 32 years old, 6 feet tall, and weighing 200 pounds. I'm married to Linda, a stunning 32-year-old redhead, and we've been happily married for 4 years. We met at a party hosted by her best friend Claire to celebrate Claire's engagement to my best friend Larry. When I first saw Linda across the room, I felt an instant connection. I asked her to dance, and we spent the entire evening together. At the end of the party, I asked her out on a date, and she said yes. After 6 months of dating, we got married, with Larry as my best man and Claire as Linda's matron of honor. Everything seemed perfect. At that time, I was transitioning out of the Army after completing 2 tours as a ranger with the SOG. Unsure of my next steps, I listened when Colonel Scott approached me with an offer to join a special operations unit based in Langley. I expressed interest, and we proceeded from there. I earned both a Purple Heart and a Silver Cross for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, though it wasn't heroics, just a strong will to survive. In my role, I acted as the point man and handled the tough tasks, while the rest of the team provided support. They located targets, arranged transport, forged documents, and managed withdrawals. My job was to eliminate targets using the provided equipment, which came with instructions on whether to make a statement or make it look accidental. My civilian cover was a security consultant for the government, with a 6-figure salary. On missions, I received an additional $250K in danger money, deposited into a Swiss-numbered account. I kept the account details in a secure box at an independent bank 200 miles away. Between assignments, I began day trading and built up a significant savings for when we eventually have children. As I mentioned, we were content and money wasn't an issue because Linda worked as a PA to the sales team manager, Albert Weiss, at an advertising agency. Albert was a pleasant older gentleman looking forward to retiring with his wife of 30 years. Linda often worked late and sometimes accompanied Albert to sales meetings across the country. I didn't mind this, as I would occasionally be away for up to 2 weeks on consulting assignments myself. Problems began, though I wasn't aware of them at the time, when Albert retired and was replaced by a new head of sales, Clive West, in September. Over the next 3 months, Linda frequently talked about how Clive was doing this or that, and how much she was learning from him, and how he wanted her on the sales team. When I jokingly commented that Clive might even be able to walk on water, Linda stopped mentioning him altogether. At this point, I wasn't concerned, as I trusted Linda completely and knew she would never betray me. However, I was looking forward to the company's Christmas party, where I would finally meet this impressive Clive. The party was scheduled for the week before Christmas, and as always, Linda was thrilled about going and showing off her new outfit. I was in my tuxedo, waiting at the bottom of the stairs when Linda appeared. I took a sharp breath. She looked absolutely stunning. She wore an emerald green dress with red 4-inch heels and the ruby necklace, earrings, and bracelet I had given her for our anniversary. "You've really gone all out this year, trying to impress someone special?" She looked away with a hint of guilt and responded, "I want to look my best for my handsome man." I smiled and asked, "And who might that be?" "You, silly. Who else?" "All right then, let's head out." We arrived at the venue 10 minutes early and were escorted to our table. I noticed we had a table to ourselves and asked Linda about it. Typically, we shared a table with some of her colleagues, whom I chatted with while she mingled. The dinner was decent but not outstanding, and as we were finishing the last of the table wine, Linda left the table. I observed her walking across the room to a tall, handsome man in an Armani suit who seemed about 5 years older than us. She touched his arm to get his attention, pointed at me, and then they both came over to our table. "Barry, this is my boss, Clive. Clive, this is my husband, Barry." I stood up and shook his hand. He attempted a firm grip, but when I matched his strength, he quickly withdrew his hand. "That's quite a grip you have there, Barry." "Same to you, Clive. How are you finding things at Benson so far?" "I'm getting the hang of it with the help of your lovely wife. I look forward to working more closely with Linda in the future." He said this with a smirk that made his intentions clear. I glanced at Linda, who avoided eye contact. Time to set him straight. "Linda." "What?" I said Linda. That's her name, not Lynn. The last time I called her Lynn, she didn't speak to me for 2 days. Please use her full name, Linda. "Oh, of course, sorry. No offense intended." "None taken. If there had been, you'd know about it." Linda, now visibly embarrassed, turned Clive around and said, "It's time to mingle and introduce you to those you haven't met yet." She shot me a furious glance before walking away. I was accustomed to Linda making the rounds with Albert, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. It usually took about an hour, and during that time I would chat with her colleagues at our table. However, whenever I sought out a familiar face, they would either look away or down at their table, which was troubling. I sat there alone, watching Linda and Albert as they made their rounds. Each time they stopped, he would move closer to her, placing his hand across her back and resting it on her hip. I was frustrated, especially since she didn't say anything to him about it. To any casual observer, they looked like a couple on a date. I recorded several minutes of this behavior and had to decide what to do, as I'd been left on my own for over 2 hours. I could either make a scene or just go home. I chose to leave. I wrote a note for Linda, collected my coat, and left. The note simply said, "You don't need me here, so I've gone home. Take a cab." There were no endearments, kisses, or "I love you" at the end. When I got home 20 minutes later, there was still no word from Linda. I turned off my phone, went to bed, and fell asleep almost instantly. I was jolted awake when Linda opened the bedroom door and turned on the light. I glanced at the clock and realized I had been home for 2 hours. Seems like she didn't miss me until much later. What was that all about? You embarrassed me in front of my boss and then just left me to find my way home. What's wrong with you? Not tonight, we'll talk in the morning. Oh no, we're talking now. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the clips of her and Clive and said, "You left me alone for over 2 hours while you and Clive acted like a pair of lovers. No one would even look at me because they were so embarrassed. If you don't believe me, just watch this." I started playing the clips, and she sat down with a frown. While she was engrossed, I went to the guest room and locked the door. Soon after, she knocked, and when I didn't answer, called out, "Barry, I'm so sorry. I can see why you're upset. I didn't mean to hurt you. Nothing is going on between me and Clive, I swear. Please open the door. See you at breakfast. Good night." The next morning I got up, took care of my routine, and showered. As I headed downstairs, I could smell cooking and realized she had made one of my favorites, waffles with bacon and eggs. When I entered the kitchen, there was coffee on the table, and she was just finishing preparing breakfast. I thanked her and dug in. She waited for me to finish before she started talking. "I'm really sorry for watching those clips. We did look like a couple, and I didn't realize how it might appear to others. I apologize for embarrassing you. But I swear nothing is going on between us. Please, believe me." "I do believe you, Linda. But you need to keep your distance from him. He practically told me he intends to seduce you. He's a predator, and you're the prey. He doesn't care who knows. And how does he get away with calling you Lynn when I got into trouble for doing the same? He's my boss, so he can call me whatever he likes. I don't like it, but there's nothing I can do. And as for him trying to seduce me, you're mistaken. He's been nothing but a gentleman. Linda, he's playing you like a cheap violin. You didn't even flinch when he put his hand on your hip. Let me explain how this happened. When he first started, he would call you into his office to collect papers and discuss work. Then he began bringing the papers out to you and leaning over you. getting you used to his presence invading your space. He would briefly put his hand on your shoulder, gradually making you accustomed to his touch. Over time, these touches lasted longer until he would rest his hand on your shoulder while talking to you at your desk. By the time he put his hand on your hip, it seemed normal to you. Am I right? Linda looked at me with tears in her eyes and nodded in agreement. I sat silently, watching my wife for a few moments. You should know that there are people who specialize in seducing married women. Their goal is to turn their husband into a cuckold, and Clive is one of those people. His next step is likely to be an invitation to lunch and a location next to you to create an opportunity for physical contact. He may reach for salt or a jug of water and hurt you, apologizing every time. But it will become a habit. After that, he can arrange a festive dinner with wine to weaken your resistance and then kiss you on the cheek and hold your hand while you return to the car. You don't have to resist, considering that he is your boss, and it may seem harmless to you. He will continue to compliment you and find reasons for physical touching until it becomes the norm, similar to what happened at the party. Eventually, he'll start asking about me, asking when I'm leaving and making comments like, "If you were mine, I'd never leave you alone," or "I think he takes you for granted." He may even suggest that you check my email for evidence of infidelity. When he finds out that I'm out of town, he can invite you to dinner under the pretext of discussing your promotion or solving a fabricated problem. You will most likely agree, hoping for career advancement or clarification of what went wrong. The next dinner may take place in an institution with a dance floor, perhaps when I leave on a business trip. During such walks, he will dance with everyone, but will focus mainly on you, creating opportunities for close physical contact. Most likely, he will dance all the slow songs with you so that the transition from lunch to dinner and dancing will seem normal. After several visits to make it more convenient for you, he will find an opportunity to kiss you. If you resist, he will apologize profusely, saying something like, "I'm so sorry. You're so beautiful that I couldn't resist. Please forgive me." You'll probably forgive him. Next time, he may make sure that you have drunk too much or even put something in your drink to weaken your restraint. Before you know it, you'll be in his room, confused by how it all happened. I'm willing to bet that if you stay on as his PA, he'll have slept with you by this time next year. I looked at Linda. She was now crying, with tears dripping from her chin. You can't be serious. You know I would never cheat on you. I can handle Carl if he tries anything. I'm disappointed that you think so little of me that you believe I'd fall for his nonsense. I'm not some starry-eyed teenager. Linda, I meant no disrespect, and I trust you completely. But predators like him have a way of bypassing your defenses. To him, you're just another conquest. Look how easily he caused a rift between us tonight. This is our first major argument since we started dating. Doesn't that tell you something? Okay, you have a point, but forewarned is forearmed. If he tries anything like you've described, I'll shut him down and report him to HR. Satisfied? Not really. If you love me as much as you say, and value our marriage, you'll give your notice tomorrow. I love you more than anything, but I'm not going to let a predatory jerk drive me out of a job I love. You mentioned you'd bet on the outcome. Well, so will I. If he hasn't slept with me by the next Christmas party, you'll buy me that Porsche I've always wanted. And if he has, anything you want. I can't lose. Okay, I'll think of something. I dropped the issue after that, and life went on as usual. We continued with our routine, going to work, socializing with friends, and making love several times a week. About 2 months later, I brought it up again. Linda, it's been 2 months since we talked about Carl. Has he asked you to lunch yet? Linda looked evasive, similar to how she acted when she wanted to hide something, like when she damaged her car. I'm not giving you any information until you tell me what you want, if I lose. I could tell she was trying to avoid answering, and I was growing concerned about our marriage. I knew Carl had asked, but had Linda accepted? The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I needed to protect myself financially. I had my attorney draft a postnup agreement. If she cheated, she would leave with only her clothes and what was in her account, nothing more. That night, when she came home after dinner, I presented her with the post-nup. "What's this?" "You asked me to decide what I wanted if you lost our bet. This is it, a post-nup. If you cheat on me before the Christmas party, you walk away with just your clothes and the money in your account." She looked at me as if I were from another planet. "You're serious? Dead serious? Are you confident enough in your ability to resist Carl to sign this document, or have you already started having lunch with him like I predicted?" She picked up the pen, signed where necessary, and threw it at me before retreating to the bedroom and locking the door. At that moment, I realized she was lost, even if she didn't. The next day, I handed the signed post-nup to my attorney for safekeeping, hoping I'd never need it, as that would imply our marriage had ended. For the rest of the day, I felt utterly useless, with a stomach full of butterflies and a sense of nausea. I briefly considered getting rid of the problem, which would be easy. But then I thought that Linda needed to prove herself if we were to start a family. I needed to be certain she was mother material now, rather than discovering it later when children were involved. I decided to let things unfold naturally. By September, Linda and I hadn't discussed the issue since she had locked me out of the bedroom that night. Things had returned to normal until late August, when she seemed to have changed. One afternoon, after returning from an assignment and finding Linda still at work, I started preparing dinner. When she came home, it was clear something was wrong, so I asked her about it. She dismissed it as a work problem. For the next few days, she appeared edgy and wouldn't discuss it. Usually, when I came back, we made love, but she said she wasn't feeling well, so we didn't have intimacy for the next 2 days. By Saturday, she seemed back to her usual self, as if she had made a decision, and the weekend went well. We made love Saturday night and Sunday morning, but her heart didn't seem fully in it. I decided to enlist some help because I was confident I would win the bet, but I needed evidence for the divorce and to start the post-nup process. I contacted our team planner and outlined my request. She and Carl would be monitored, and a surveillance team would bug their cars, his office, and any rooms they used. Although I was saddened by the end of my marriage, Linda had been warned. I instructed the team not to provide daily updates, but to deliver a report by the end of November. On the 15th, I received the report folder along with a piece of advice. If there's any chance of reconciliation, only watch the first video. It should be sufficient for the divorce. The rest of the footage isn't admissible in court, but listening to the dialogue might help you move on. Following their advice, I only watched the first video. It showed Linda and the other person walking down a hotel corridor. Linda opened a door, and they both entered at 11:30 p.m. The video remained blank until 8:30 the next morning, when the other person exited the room with a satisfied grin. My marriage was clearly over. It was time to let it go. I didn't need to listen to the dialogue on the other discs. This was enough. For the night of the Christmas party, I stood at the bottom of the stairs waiting for Linda, just as I had done the previous year. This time, however, I was in sweatpants instead of a tuxedo. About 6 weeks ago, Linda returned from a sales conference with her team, and she seemed like a completely different person. There was no more intimacy or affectionate gestures. She appeared distant and emotionally detached. It was clear to me that she had succumbed to shitheads' advances. Although this realization deeply saddened me, I knew I could no longer be close to her. I made up a story that I had testicular problems and claimed that I had been advised to avoid any activity, which also meant that I would not be able to attend the Christmas party. Recently promoted to assistant sales manager, Linda would have to go alone. When Linda finally came down the stairs, I was taken aback by her lack of effort. Unlike previous years, she had opted for a plain cocktail dress, sensible shoes, and minimal jewelry. If not for the dress, she could have been heading to work. I was astonished. She had always strived to outshine the other wives at these parties. She approached me and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "I'm heading out now," she said. "I won't be late and I'll have a lot to share with you about tonight." With that, she opened the door and headed to the party. Earlier in the day, I had met with my attorney, Sarah Cox, and collected 3 lawsuits: a divorce petition for Linda, an alienation of affection claim against the jerk, which I knew wouldn't lead to much but could potentially embarrass him, and a case for failing to enforce company policy on harassment by a superior. Since half the company knew about their affair, the boss had to be aware. Next, I visited my surveillance team, who had gone above and beyond in their duties, and I wanted to reward them. They flatly declined any monetary compensation, saying it was their pleasure, and they were available if I needed anything else. I was genuinely moved by their loyalty and expressed my gratitude extensively. They then handed me 3 additional folders revealing that Clive had been quite active. He had seduced 2 of the remaining 4 women on the sales team and the CEO's PA. When I got back home, I packed all the evidence and legal documents into my briefcase, dressed in just slacks, a sport coat, and a tie, and headed to the party. On the way, I picked up the court server and brought her along. I gave her money for a cab ride home and asked her to pass along the folders to the woman's husband, whom I pointed out. We arrived at the party, which was already in full swing. I showed my invitation and was admitted along with the court server. We took a seat at a corner table, and no one paid us any attention as I identified the key people whose lives were about to change. When I spotted Linda, she was engaged in an animated conversation with an unpleasant man, and he didn't look too thrilled. When the music slowed down for a slow dance, I decided it was time to act. I approached the band leader and informed him I had an announcement to make. He stopped the band and handed me the microphone. I tapped it to get everyone's attention. "Good evening, everyone. I hope you're having a great time. I won't keep you long, but I have a few early Christmas presents to distribute." I gave a nod to the server, who then approached Linda and Clive. Linda appeared stunned, her expression resembling that of a surprised goldfish. The server handed Linda her first package, then turned to Clive to give him his. She continued to distribute packages to the other wronged husbands, before making her way over to me, where the elderly Mr. Benson was trying to catch my attention. She walked up to him and uttered those dreaded words. "Are you Mr. Walter Benson?" "Yes." "Mr. Benson, you have been served." She flashed a smile at me and left the venue. The silence was palpable. Instead of a pin dropping, the room was filled with the anguished cries of betrayed husbands. "How could you cheating beastach, and why on earth?" Similar outcries echoed from the other betrayed husbands. The sounds of slaps being delivered to unfaithful wives were also heard. Clive, concerned for his safety, made a quick exit. Linda, still staring at me, opened her envelope. Upon seeing the photos, she burst into tears and collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The first photo depicted a Porsche with a red X over it and a note saying, "I win." The second photo showed her letting Clive into her room, and the third showed him leaving the next morning. Mr. Benson finally managed to get my attention. Mr. Benson was a devout man and a lay preacher with traditional values. "What's going on here, young man?" I took him to a quiet table and outlined the situation. He was responsible for this because Clive initially had an affair with Linda in a hotel room paid for by the company. Since this place was considered company property, it was believed that the affair took place on company property. Since then, Clive has continued to see Linda at least twice a day at his office for the past 6 weeks. In addition, he had relationships with 3 other women, whom he then blackmailed into dirty relationships. I informed him that the entire company, including the CEO, was aware of these cases and did nothing to stop them. Naturally, the CEO only found out about his wife's involvement tonight. Karma is a baby. He had such a red face that I thought he might have a heart attack. He got up and walked over to the microphone. "I ask for your attention, please." There was silence in the hall, broken only by the sobs of women whose lives had just collapsed. "It has come to my attention that some employees of this company were engaged in inappropriate activities on the company's territory. You know who you are, and on Monday morning you will need to contact the HR department for disciplinary action. Mr. Clive West. If you're still here, you're fired without bonuses or references. As for the others, to say that I am disappointed would be an understatement. Many of you knew what was going on and did nothing. You could have prevented the breakup of 4 marriages, but instead gossiped and did nothing. I've always considered my employees to be family, but you showed me how wrong I was. Therefore, until further notice, all public events are canceled while I investigate this case. Ray, as CEO, you should have stopped Clive's behavior as soon as you found out about it. The fact that this also applies to you does not justify your inaction. You have been demoted to the head of the company, and I will immediately resume my duties as CEO. Please come to me on Monday morning. Husbands of the victims, please contact me to discuss the terms of compensation. I recommend that you all hire one lawyer to represent you collectively. Now I need to personally apologize to Mr. Scott and assess the extent of the damage. Good night, everyone. The party is over. Please disperse. There was a general movement towards the door, accompanied by many disapproving glances directed at the offending wives. Ralph Benson came over and sat beside me, taking my hand. I'm really sorry, son. There's an all-night Starbucks across the street. How about we grab a coffee and see if we can figure things out? That sounds good, but I need to talk to my soon-to-be ex-wife first. All right, Barry, I'll see you over there in a few minutes. I walked over to Linda, who was sitting alone, quietly crying. When I approached, she looked up at me. I'm so sorry, baby, I messed up. Can we move past this and start over? Sorry, Linda, but that ship has sailed. You had your chance and blew it. I'll be away for a few weeks, and I want you out of the house before I return. Here's the name and address of my attorney. According to the postnup you signed, you're entitled to only your clothes and what you brought into the marriage. However, you can keep your jewelry and whatever is in your account. All other accounts are frozen, including your credit cards. You came into the marriage with $3,000 in your account. My attorney has a check for that amount for you to collect. The lease on your car and your insurance will expire in a couple of months. You can either take them over or cancel them. It's up to you. Please, Barry, I made a mistake. Things got out of hand, and I didn't mean for this to happen. Do you remember the conversation we had last Christmas when I told you exactly what would happen if you stayed as his PA? I know you do, so no need to answer. You told me you weren't a starry-eyed schoolgirl and that you could handle him, refusing to leave your job because you wanted that promotion. Well, you got the promotion, but look at what it cost you, what it cost us. Was it worth it? She broke down in tears again as I turned and walked away. I headed across to meet Ralph, still holding on to feelings for her, and had an idea. When I arrived, I saw Ralph had already placed our order. He must be a mind reader. The strong black coffee with 2 sugars was perfect. I took a sip and smiled. How did you know? I asked. Barry, I've been in sales all my life. I can read people like a book. If I had interviewed Clive, he wouldn't have gotten the job. As for your coffee, you seemed like the strong coffee type, so I took a guess with the sugar. Did I get it right? Exactly right. Look, I have a flight in a little over an hour, so I'll get straight to the point. Are you considering firing all those wives? It's been on my mind. I don't approve of cheating. Can we make a deal? If I drop my lawsuit, will you keep Linda on and promote her to Clive's old position? She's been PA to that role for 3 years and has often told me she could do a better job than her boss. You still have feelings for her despite what she did to you, don't you? I can't help it. I just can't be with her knowing what she did. So do we have a deal? Against my better judgment, yes, we have a deal. But if she can't deliver, she's out. Okay? Sounds fair. Thank you. I finished my coffee, stood up, and prepared to leave. Barry, if you ever need a job, come see me. I have 2 other branches and am always looking for talent. I smiled, nodded, shook his hand, and left. Another time, another place? and I'm sure we would have been friends. I caught my flight to England and touched down at Heathrow 13 hours later. I took a cab to the Dorchester and settled into my luxury suite. The next morning, I woke up late and called room service to order the full English breakfast. I had always wanted to try it, and when it arrived, it looked like a heart attack on a plate. Everything was unhealthy except for the eggs. I hesitantly tried a bit of everything, and it was all delicious. I devoured the meal with 2 cups of what the English call coffee. While in England, I wanted to see everything, and the hotel doorman was more than happy to help me plan my day and steer clear of tourist traps. On my last day, I called my team and asked them to arrange a meeting with Clive West. Time for my revenge. As I left the hotel for the final time, I gave Tom, the doorman, a generous tip and bid farewell. I'd enjoyed my time in England and promised myself I'd return someday. The next day, I arrived home and walked into the house, which no longer felt like home. It felt empty and cold, and I immediately missed Linda. While unpacking, I noticed that all of Linda's belongings were gone, which left me with a hollow feeling. I went out for a meal and a few beers, and after several drinks, I was pushed into a cab and taken home. The following morning, I realized it was Sunday, and that I couldn't get anything done until Monday. After collecting my car, I cleared the yard and watered the flower boxes. I wondered who had done that while I was away. As I was bagging up the cut grass, my next-door neighbor came out. I asked him if he had watered the flowers, and he told me Linda had come over several times to take care of them. I was surprised. Why would she do that? On Monday, I called my attorney and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Linda, after the first Christmas party. When I introduced Clive to Barry, I immediately sensed some tension between them. Their handshake was like a display of competitive energy, and Barry clearly came out on top. The interaction was charged, and I was concerned that Barry might cause a scene, so I quickly guided Clive away to mingle with others. I got so absorbed in making my rounds that I lost track of time. Noticing that Barry was no longer at our table, I went looking for him. When I couldn't find him, I asked one of the husbands he usually conversed with if he knew where Barry had gone. He left. I saw him take his coat and head out. I was livid. Did he say why? He didn't need to. You left him alone for over 3 hours. I suppose he realized he wasn't wanted. I did see him slip a note into your purse. Have you read it yet? I walked over to our table, grabbed my purse, and pulled out the note. The note. You don't need me, so I've gone home. It was signed Barry. Not Love Barry as it usually was, which only fueled my anger. I checked my watch. I had been at the party for over 3.5 hours and left my husband alone. No wonder he was upset. I grabbed my purse to go home, only to realize I had no money and hadn't brought any of my cards. How was I going to get back? I opened my purse to retrieve my cloakroom ticket and found 2 $20 bills. Barry had anticipated everything. When I got home, Barry was already in bed. I started berating him, expressing how humiliated I felt. He remained calm and said we would discuss it in the morning, but I insisted on talking immediately. He accused me of making him look foolish by parading around with Clive. When I denied it, he handed me his phone and told me to watch the video he had taken. Watching the clip in horror, I saw that he was right. We did appear to be a couple. Feeling terrible, I went to apologize, but he had moved to the guest bedroom and locked the door. I knocked and shouted my apology, but he insisted we would talk in the morning. I made sure to wake up before Barry and began preparing one of his favorite breakfasts. Once I heard him stirring, I finished making his meal so it would be ready when he came downstairs. We ate in silence, and I found myself wondering what was on his mind. After he finished his breakfast, I began my apology, assuring him that nothing was happening between Clive and me. He said he believed me, but then explained how I had fallen into Clive's trap and what Clive's next move would be to try to seduce me. Initially, I was shocked, but then everything clicked. Barry's analysis seemed spot on, almost as if Clive was following a script written by Barry. However, when Barry asked me to leave Benson's, I got frustrated and told him I would never betray his trust. I wasn't a naive schoolgirl. I could handle myself. At one point, Barry bet that I would cheat by next Christmas if I didn't leave Benson's. I was certain I would never cheat on Barry. I'd rather die. So I took him up on the bet and asked for a new car when he lost. I also inquired what he wanted if he won. He said he would think about it. For the next 2 months, everything went just as Barry had predicted. Clive seized every chance to be near me, but I was prepared for him. He dangled the prospect of a promotion to sales manager, which Kim would leave vacant at the end of the year. We went out to lunch a few times to discuss work matters that could have easily been handled at the office. Yes, he touched me innocently as often as he could, but I was aware of his intentions and remained inwardly amused. He began asking me questions about Barry's work and about his absences, just as I had been cautioned. He held my hand a few times, and when I didn't object, he started to caress it. I would politely withdraw my hand whenever this happened. He would apologize, claiming he wasn't aware he was doing it. Around that time, Barry brought home an envelope from his lawyer and asked me to sign it, claiming it was a prenup to be enforced in case of my infidelity. I signed it without reading it, confident that it wouldn't be needed because our relationship was strong. The sales team, including myself, had to visit an important client for a pitch and were away for 3 days. After the client signed the contract, Clive suggested we celebrate, so we all went out for dinner, except for Kim, who preferred to head home early. We had dinner at the hotel, and Clive proposed that we have a drink at the bar. We all agreed, but when we arrived, there were no available seats. We ended up sitting at a table, and Clive ordered drinks. A band started playing, and we all had a few dances. After 3 drinks, I usually limit myself to 2, Clive and I were dancing to a slow song when he suddenly kissed me. Initially, I responded briefly, but then slapped his face and walked away. Clive chased after me, apologizing profusely, saying he had too much to drink and was overwhelmed by how beautiful I looked. It was a classic excuse, and I nearly fell for it. I felt ashamed and frustrated, both with myself and Barry for being right about such situations. If I had had a few more drinks, I might have ended up in Clive's bed that night. I left early the next morning before breakfast and drove home. When I arrived, Barry must have noticed something was wrong and offered to help, but I shut him out and was moody all day Friday. That night, as I lay in bed unsure about Clive, I had an epiphany. I would report Clive to HR on Monday and resign. By Saturday morning, I felt a huge weight had been lifted. I cuddled up to Barry, and we made love with an intensity I hadn't felt before. We did it again that night and the next morning, and I'm sure Barry realized we had reached a turning point in our marriage. On Monday, I went to work as usual, determined to put an end to this charade and set Clive straight. When I arrived, Clive was waiting for me and invited me into his office. "Linda, I'm really sorry about Thursday night. I drank too much and wasn't thinking clearly. I know you're upset with me right now, but please don't act impulsively. I've spoken to Mr. Benson, and he's going to recommend you for the managerial position. However, if you cause a scene now, the board might not look favorably on it, and you could lose the opportunity. I promise to stay out of your way if you just give me another chance." I considered his offer since I was keen on the promotion. Ultimately, I agreed, and things moved forward. The annual company sales conference was approaching, and all 3 offices from around the country would be attending. My promotion was set to be announced during this event. The conference would be held in the neighboring state for 2 days, with a company ball for staff only on the second night, serving as a team-building exercise. We all drove there separately and checked in. I went down for dinner, joined some colleagues, and enjoyed a pleasant meal with a few drinks. Feeling tired, I decided to go to bed early, knowing the next day would be busy. I was dressed in a business suit for the afternoon meetings, and everything went smoothly. During the final plenary session, awards were distributed, and my promotion was announced to enthusiastic applause. To celebrate, I had dinner at a restaurant and drank a couple glasses of wine. Clive, who was sitting at the other end of the table, kept his promise and has refrained from making any advances since our last conversation. After dinner, I changed into a cocktail dress for the graduation ball. When I entered the ballroom, I saw the rest of our team and joined them. Several gentlemen from other offices invited me to dance, and I agreed. They were all very polite and kept their proper distance. In the end, Mr. Benson apologized and left. Clive immediately asked me to dance. Since I hadn't danced with him all evening, I agreed. We danced 2 songs, and I realized that I was feeling completely relaxed, probably because of the wine and 3 cocktails that I had drunk earlier. When Clive asked me to the last dance, I did not refuse, although the dance was slow. As we moved through the hall, Clive took me behind a large potted plant at the back of the hall and stopped. I looked up at him and he kissed me. Instead of pulling away, I pulled him closer. We continued in the same vein until the song ended. I took Clive to my room, where we quickly got down to business. We slept together. After that, I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning, not understanding what was going on, feeling a strange sensation. I looked at myself and was horrified to see that my fingers were covered in something white. The memories of what happened came flooding back to me. I screamed, ran into the bathroom, and caught a glimpse of a grinning Clive, who was lying next to where I had just been lying. I desperately tried to wash it all off, crying uncontrollably, realizing that Barry was right. Clive seduced me at Christmas, and now my life is in ruins. When I couldn't get myself cleaned up anymore, I returned to the bedroom where Clive was standing dressed, still with the same grin on his face. Well, I finally got my way with little Miss Goody Two-Shoes. It took me almost a year, but it was worth it. You're a godsend. From now on, I'm going to enjoy having you with me while your husband doesn't know anything about it. Starting Monday, I can have some privacy with you at any time. Jerk. I will never be with you again. What did you put in my drink, huh? Well, let's not rush it. We have a long, tempting relationship ahead of us. In answer to your question, I added a little cheerfulness to your drink. You were my main target, but your obsession with your cuckold husband made things difficult. It took almost a year, and in the end I had to take this step. Molly and Christina from our sales department gave up in just 2 months, and even our CEO's wife, Lucy, took almost 6 months. As for your vow to never be with me again, take a look at this. He took out his phone, showing a photo of me with him. I started crying again. Don't cry. Think about how exciting we'll be spending time behind your husband's back. If you don't want these photos to be sent to Barry, you have to do me a little favor right now. I sobbed and did what he wanted. He looked at me and said, I won't pay attention to it this time, but if it happens again, your husband will be in for a surprise. Then he left the room, and I got dressed and went home, skipping breakfast completely. When I got home, I couldn't look Barry in the eye and was worried about what the future might hold for me. I was afraid that Barry would eventually find out what I had done and decide to divorce me. Barry helped me keep my distance by telling me that he was suffering from a condition called testicular inflammation. He explained that he would not be able to be close to me for several weeks. This decision suited me perfectly, as I could not accept the idea that he would have to perform even on a second-rate stage, whether it was careless or not. On Monday, I came to work as usual, and Clive was already waiting for me. He called me into his office and locked the door behind us. Okay, Linda, you know what I want. And I did what he wanted. After that, he told me to get back to work. When I left his office, I saw Molly and Christina giving me sympathetic looks. I went to the bathroom and cried until I had no more strength left. Barry and I didn't talk much that night. When he asked what happened, I apologized and went to bed. The same situation repeated the next day and continued for the next few days. Clive wanted me to be satisfied, but he couldn't do it because I was depressed and didn't want it, so I couldn't do it. After several days of trying to please me, he eventually gave up and started doing it with either Molly or Kristen. Since I was near his office, I could hear them cheering, and I was glad it wasn't me. Despite this, I had to go to his office from time to time, but I still did not figure out how to avoid this situation by staying married. On the morning of the Christmas party, Clive called me into his office. You turned out to be a big disappointment. Why couldn't you get carried away with it like other women? We could have a good time, but I'm not going to let you go that easily. When we get back, I'll have a meeting with a few potential clients at the Silver Dollar Hotel for dinner, and you'll be part of the deal. I told them about you, and they are eager to work with you as a couple after signing the contract. See you tonight. There was no way I was going to put up with this. Clive and his entourage were in for a surprise. That night, Barry said he was still uncomfortable at the party, but he insisted that I go. It worked out well for me. I was able to meet Clive and explain everything to Barry when I got home. I knew that my marriage was probably over, but I couldn't go on like this. It was destroying me. I was losing weight because I was sick after every meal, and I didn't get enough sleep at night for more than 6 weeks. I changed my clothes for the party, and I'm sure Barry noticed it because he gave me a strange look as he left. His farewell was cold and distant, without a "see you later" or "I love you." It seemed to me that we would never see each other again. When I arrived at the venue and made the rounds, many people avoided making eye contact with me. It was clear that word had spread about my status as an outcast. No one wanted to sit at my table, so I ended up alone, struggling to hold back tears. When Clive walked in, he made a beeline for me and took a seat beside me, wearing a knowing smirk. I looked him directly in the eye and said, "You can wipe that smirk off your face. Whatever you had planned for Monday is not going to happen. After Mr. Benson delivers his Christmas speech, I'm going to expose everything you've been up to, name names, and point fingers. My marriage might be over, but your career won't survive, and when Barry catches up to you, I doubt you will either." At that moment, the music abruptly stopped, and a voice I knew all too well began wreaking havoc on people's lives. It was my husband exacting his revenge. Just then, a woman approached me and asked if I was Linda Scott. When I confirmed, she handed me an envelope and said, "You have been served." She then did the same with Clive. After that, she approached the husbands of Molly and Christine, giving each of them a package. She did the same with our CEO and then with Mr. Benson. My husband was standing next to Mr. Benson, and I almost fainted. I opened the envelope, already knowing what to expect. Divorce papers. However, the first thing I pulled out was a picture of the Porsche I had wanted. He had placed a large red cross over it and written "I win" in capital letters. Next, I found 2 more photos showing Clive entering and leaving my hotel room. I collapsed on the floor, and 2 men helped me into a chair. Molly and her husband were shouting at each other, and Christine was on the floor holding her face. She had clearly been hit. 2 men were restraining her husband, who was crying like a baby. I couldn't see the CEO or his wife, so I didn't know what had happened to them. Mr. Benson took the microphone and announced that the party was over and that severe measures would be in place by Monday. He then sat down with Barry and they started talking. Mr. Benson left the room after that, and I didn't see him again. Barry stood in front of me looking very sad. He told me he was leaving and would return in 3 weeks, by which time I needed to have moved out. He said a lot more than that, and I begged him to take me back, but he simply walked away. I was afraid to go to work on Monday, but I arrived on time. The guard escorted me to Mr. Benson's office. Once we were inside, Mr. Benson released the guard and motioned for me to sit down. I noticed a box of tissues in front of me and took one to wipe my eyes. "Well, young lady, you and a few others have really ruined your marriages. If you had contacted me earlier, none of this would have been necessary. I would have dealt with West and made sure that you were compensated. But since you haven't done that, now we need to decide what to do with all of you. West has disappeared, and I don't expect to see him again. I like to think of myself as an honest person, so if you tell me everything without hiding anything, I'll make a decision based on that. I warn you, I can spot a lie from a mile away. If you lie to me, you're finished. So start from the beginning and don't hide anything." I told him everything, starting from our first meeting with Clive, in every detail. At the end, I was in tears, and he handed me some napkins. Thank you for your honesty. You've definitely broadened my perspective. It's clear now that this was more than just a random affair. It was a carefully orchestrated attack on your marriage and others involved. It appears you were the last to resist and ultimately had to be sedated, but that doesn't excuse your failure to come to me afterwards. This indicates a flaw in your decision-making, which leads me to another point. Your husband must care deeply for you, as he and I had a discussion that night after I left, resulting in an agreement. He agreed to withdraw his claim, which I understand was in the high six-figure range, provided that I retained you in Clive's former position, which I agreed to. So, congratulations. You are now the senior sales representative for Benson's. He extended his hand, and I shook it. Thank you. I feel I don't deserve this, but I won't let you down, I promise. Don't be too grateful just yet. You have a lot of work ahead of you to rebuild the sales team. I plan to fire both Mally and Christine as they contributed to the breakdown of your marriage. And remember, I'll be closely monitoring your performance. If you don't meet expectations, you're out. I hope you understand that. I understand, and you won't be disappointed. With that, I stood up and went to my new office. Barry had come through for me once again, and all I had done was cause him pain. I met with my attorney as planned. She informed me that Linda had come by, collected the check, and was ready to sign the divorce papers, on one condition. Linda wanted to meet with me for 30 minutes to explain what had happened. Sarah recommended that I agree to this, or else Linda could prolong the divorce process for up to a year. I asked Sarah to arrange the meeting. That afternoon, I notified the firm, the fictitious name the team used for the non-existent agency, about the situation and requested some time off. They quickly agreed and put the team on hold for the foreseeable future. I then reached out to the team planner to set up a meeting with Clive West. Clive had left the party and vanished, moving to another state where he secured a job as a marketing manager at a small printing company. He had begun making advances toward the female staff and was out with a married woman at a diner. He managed to spike her drink, anticipating a night of unrestrained behavior while her husband was away. When the couple went to Clive's car, the team intervened. Clive was tasered and sedated, while the woman was rendered unconscious and taken to the local hospital. When Clive woke up, he was groggy and soon realized he was suspended by his wrists over a 45-gallon drum filled with some kind of liquid. The first sound Clive heard was, "Boss, he's awake." 4 figures approached, each wearing ski masks. Just then, Clive lost control of his bladder and wet himself. The 4 men laughed, and one of them spoke. "Hi, Clive. I see your evening didn't quite go as planned. Don't worry. The woman you were with is in the hospital with just a headache. I'm sure she'll have some explaining to do to her husband about why she was dressed up and why she was at a diner with another man. But that's not our concern. You have much bigger problems to worry about. First off, you're probably curious about what's in the barrel. Let me clarify. It's a horrible mix of corrosives designed to dissolve a body in a few hours. But not yours, at least not yet. Do you recognize my voice? No? Well, let's make it clear." The man speaking removed his mask, and Clive thought, "Oh shit, I'm screwed. It's Barry Scott. I am sure that now you will recognize me, the person you have wronged, or, to be more precise, my wife. I know she agreed, but it was because of the illegal substances you gave her. You achieved your goal and ruined our marriage. But now, you have to face the consequences. I understand that part of your excitement was caused by the anticipation of the reward. Well, let's see how much pleasure you get from anticipating the suffering that you will have to go through over the next 3 days. You're proud of your looks, so the first thing I'll do is shave your head. You like to listen to women talk about their lives and their husbands so that you can manipulate them. Therefore, I will deprive you of one ear. You also appreciate their beauty, so you won't be able to see. You like to lure them into your bed. You tainted my wife's honor by kissing her. You touched my wife in a way that only befits me." I picked up the rose pruning scissors and did it. "You were dancing with my wife. After all, you abused my wife. You will never experience pleasure again. Only after all this will you realize how much pain you've caused me. You might be considering reporting this to the police, but if you do, two things will happen. First, my associates will find you and lower you into this drum. You might not care since your life is already shattered. Additionally, they will take your sister and nieces to be auctioned in Mexico, where they fetch a high price, especially blonde white women and even more for children. Of course, I was only bluffing. I would never harm a child, but he didn't know that. Tears were streaming down his face, but I felt no satisfaction. So, how do you like the suspense so far? Cat got your tongue? We lifted him off the hook he was suspended from and strapped him into a chair. Over the next 3 days, I followed through on my threats, eventually leaving a broken man by the roadside and calling 911. The police did question me about the kidnapping, but I had evidence that I was on a flight from England at the time. Clive never revealed what had happened to him. He would only say he couldn't remember anything after leaving the diner. Meeting. I was sitting alone in Sarah's empty office, waiting for Linda to arrive. Sarah was with me and informed me that the entire meeting would be recorded for my protection. When Linda entered, it became clear that she had put a lot of effort into this meeting. Her hair was styled in a new way, her makeup was flawless, and she was wearing open clothes. She looked amazing, but it didn't make any impression on me. I dressed casually to show my indifference. I started a conversation. Okay, Sarah, you asked for this meeting. What do you want? First of all, I want to apologize and assure you that I was trying not to hurt you. The first time I was under the influence of illegal substances and lost control. After that, he blackmailed me into becoming his woman. In the end, I realized that I would never be free of him, and I was going to expose him at the Christmas party when you went off the rails and ruined everything. When you arrived, you saw me informing him of my plan. I know all this, but it doesn't free you from guilt. You were warned in advance of his intentions, but you continued, hoping for a promotion. When he first tried to kiss you, you should have stopped it, but you didn't. You continued to date him behind my back until he eventually attacked you. Even then, you could have come to me and I would have forgiven you. Instead, you handled everything on your own, enduring further bullying for the next 6 weeks. I can't even look at you right now. You're tainted by his depravity. So if you want reconciliation, forget about it. You missed that chance when you slept with him for the first time after he attacked you at the hotel. So are we done, or do I need to listen to some more of your pathetic excuses? Linda, in tears, got up and ran out of the room when I shouted after her. Don't forget to sign the divorce papers when you leave. Linda had moved in with her parents while she looked for a place of her own. The house where we had lived together was part of my job benefits, so I remained there alone. One night, her mother called me. I had always gotten along well with her parents. They saw me as the son they never had. Barry, Linda is in a terrible state. She only works, hardly eats, and spends all her time in her room crying. I'm worried she might hurt herself. Can't you forgive her? She knows she was at fault, and I'm sure she would never act so recklessly again. Mom, I'm truly sorry it has come to this. I'm just as heartbroken as she is, but there's no turning back now. She made her choices, and now she has to face the consequences. I still love her, but I can't just switch that off. If it helps at all, I can't sleep either. And every time I think of her, it feels like a knife in my heart. She hurt me deeply. I don't think I will ever be able to trust another woman again. I can't endure that kind of pain once more. Please let her know I wish her the best and that she should move on. Later that week, her dad called, and I anticipated hearing a similar sentiment from him, but he surprised me. Hey, son, I know Mom called earlier this week, and I just wanted you to know that I support you. If Mom had treated me the way she did you when I was your age, I might still be in prison for multiple murders. I've given Linda a hard time over her actions, but she's still my daughter, so I'm doing what I can to support her. I also want to thank you for not resorting to physical conflict with her, even though she deserved it. If you ever need someone to talk to, just give me a call, and we can meet up for a drink. I know you and Linda are done, but please don't be a stranger. Dad, I can't tell you how much your words mean to me. I truly wish I could move past this and restore what we had, but it's still too painful right now, and I can't think clearly about Linda. Maybe in a year or two I might be able to forgive her and we can be friends, but I'm not making any promises. Please tell her I love her and that she should move on with her life. That was the last time I spoke to her parents. I went back to work, and life went on. I stopped dating and didn't seek out intimate relationships. When I felt the need, I used a high-end escort agency, but I never saw the same girl twice. I was improving in my day trading and making good money. 2 months later, I was summoned to meet Colonel Scott, no relation. He informed me that our department was set to expand. We were tasked with establishing 2 new units, one in England to cover Europe and another in Japan to cover Asia and the Far East. I was offered the position of setting up the unit in England, which would consist of a 5-man team drawn from France, Germany, Italy, and Britain. I would oversee the team but would not be directly involved in the missions. The team would include a sergeant from the SAS as the point man, with others focusing on planning, reconnaissance, supply, and cyber information. I accepted the role as I was feeling somewhat stagnant in my current position, and of course there was a pay increase, though without additional danger money. Financially, it would be about the same overall. I took the offer because I was no longer content where I was. Everything seemed to remind me of Linda, reopening old wounds. I needed a fresh start, so I decided to leave at the end of the month. I packed up the belongings I wanted to take, or have sent, and stored the rest. Leaving the house was bittersweet. I was saddened by the many happy memories, but also relieved to move past the sadness. Upon arriving in England, an embassy car met me, and I would be stationed in London at the embassy with an apartment just outside Chelsea. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a lounge diner, ensuring my comfort. A cleaner would come twice a week, and a driver or bodyguard would pick me up each morning and drop me off after work. I met the team and we did our best to get acquainted since I would be staying in London while they were based at the SAS barracks in Hereford, with our only contact being by phone. I quickly adapted and started working, and I was surprised by the sheer volume of calls we handled throughout the year. Our lead agent was racking up impressive results, and the criminal elements were in turmoil. This situation persisted for the next 5 years, during which I began to miss the American weather, as it seemed to rain almost incessantly through the winter, and with droughts each summer. Who would have guessed? I resigned from the company and returned home, unsure of what to expect. I found a charming 3-bedroom house in a gated community and moved in. I no longer needed to work, but continued to invest in the markets, earning enough to avoid dipping into my savings. I dined out most evenings, worked out at the local gym 3 times a week, and enjoyed concerts, plays, and occasional trips to the cinema. The last of these turned out to be life-changing. After seeing the latest Marvel film, I was sitting at Kim's Diner, savoring a steak dinner with a beer, when someone took a seat across from me. I looked up and nearly choked on a mouthful of beer. There, sitting across from me, was Linda. Oh, just what I needed. I thought I had moved on and was enjoying my bachelor life. And suddenly there she was, looking as stunning as ever. Well, aren't you going to say hello after all these years? My heart was racing. This woman still affected me more than I cared to admit. I was actually glad to see her and realized I no longer harbored the grudge I'd held for so long. Hi, Linda. You look great. That was all I could manage to say. And she did look great. Much more at ease than I felt, that's for sure. Is that all you've got to say? No, how have you been? Or, it's good to see you. Sorry, you caught me off guard. Yes, it's good to see you. What brings you here? I glanced around, trying to spot a partner or boyfriend. I'm out with some work friends. We have a monthly girls' night with a movie and dinner afterwards. Barry, we have a lot to catch up on, but not here. Call me and we'll arrange to meet up. Please don't brush me off. It's really important that we talk. Anyway, I need to get back to the others or they'll start making up stories, if you know what I mean. She pulled out a business card and wrote her number on the back, and I watched her walk away. I thought I was over her. But now, here I was, watching her leave and wondering about what might have been. What should have been if only she had remained faithful. My stomach tightened, and I was tempted to tear up the card, but she had seemed so insistent about meeting, so I kept it. My meal was ruined, so I asked for the check. As I paid, I noticed Linda and her friends glancing at me and smiling. Call me petty, but I ignored them and walked out. The whole way home, I couldn't get her out of my head. If only we hadn't crossed paths. I slept poorly that night, got up early, and went to the gym to try to distract myself. It didn't work. She was constantly on my mind, so I decided to call her, but not yet. Let her sweat and wonder if I would call. I managed to hold off until Thursday and finally called her. The card indicated she was now the CEO at Benson's, and I uncharitably wondered who she had slept with for that promotion. I immediately scolded myself for that unworthy thought. When I called, she answered right away. "Hi, Barry," she said, her cheerful tone reminding me of how much I missed her. "I thought you were never going to call. I had my reasons. Look, if you still want to meet, I'm up for it. How about Friday night at that diner? Sorry, Barry, I'm going to dinner at Mom's Friday night. How about we meet for lunch at the diner, say at 2, and take it from there? Okay, see you then." I ended the call and went about my usual Saturday morning errands, but my mind kept drifting to Linda and why she wanted to reconnect after all this time. When I got home, I changed into some slacks and a polo shirt. Nothing too formal, but not too casual either. Upon arriving, I was relieved to find her in a booth tucked away in the corner, likely for some privacy. She was dressed in jeans, a t-shirt, and a denim jacket. As I approached, she stood up, and instead of shaking hands, she pulled me in for a quick kiss on the cheek. I felt a flutter in my stomach and stepped back to look at her. She was grinning as if she'd just won a wager, and then sat back down. I followed suit and stared at the menu, but my thoughts were still lingering on that kiss. Damn, she still had the ability to affect me so easily. I knew I needed to take control of the situation. "So, Linda, what's so urgent that we had to meet and reopen old wounds? Haven't we both suffered enough?" "I'm sorry if I've caused you more pain. It wasn't my intention. You just seemed so lost when you came in. I thought maybe you needed a bit of comfort like old times. Can we order first? I'm starving. I came straight from the gym and didn't have breakfast." We ordered bacon waffles and eggs for Linda, a bagel for me, and both of us got coffee. As we ate, we updated each other on what had happened in our lives over the past 5 years. Linda had been promoted to CEO when Ray Barnes moved on to new opportunities and Ralph Benson went into semi-retirement. Linda asked about my past 5 years, but I explained that I couldn't share much due to the classified nature of my job. She seemed genuinely interested when I mentioned that I had obtained my trader's license and was doing well. We chatted about various topics through dessert, but once that was cleared and more coffee was served, Linda's demeanor shifted. "Barry, the first thing I need to say is that I've missed you every single day we were apart and never stopped loving you. You should also know that I tried for 2 years to find you, but the government wouldn't even confirm that you worked for them. I gave up when 2 men in black suits came to see me and told me to stop searching due to national security concerns. I was left wondering if I had been married to James Bond without knowing it. And now, here we are having run into each other. I need to know if you're still working for the government before we go any further." "No, Lynn. I've left that life behind. I now work independently as a trader." "In that case, there's something you need to know." She took an envelope out of her purse and opened it, then took out a photo and handed it to me with a smile. The picture showed a little girl of about 5 years old, who was looking at the camera and smiling. I noticed the resemblance to Linda and looked at her. raising an eyebrow questioningly. "This is Sarah Jane Scott, our daughter. Here is the proof." She handed me a birth certificate and 2 documents. In the certificate, I was listed as the father, and in other documents there were DNA results confirming that I was indeed her father. I was stunned, not knowing if this was some kind of elaborate trick to get me back or if it was for real. How? When? The last time we were together before Clive attacked me. I felt sick and nauseous every morning before the Christmas party. I thought it was just stress, but after you left, I went to the doctor, who told me that I was 4 months pregnant. I was desperate, thinking it might be Clive's baby, but I couldn't bring myself to terminate the pregnancy in case it was yours, so I carried her to term. When she was born and I saw her for the first time, I realized that she was ours, so I did a DNA test and it confirmed that she was your daughter. Barry, I know you've always wanted children and now you have one. You need to decide if you want to be a part of her life, and if so, in what capacity. You can choose who you will be. An absent father, a father who works on weekends, or a father who works full-time. I need to know before I introduce you to her. She recognizes you because I have our wedding photo on my wall and a picture of us together on the mantelpiece. I never gave up hope that we would be together again. On the other hand, if you don't want to be a father, just leave, and I'll never contact you again. The choice is yours. I sat there looking like a complete fool, already completely taken with this little girl I hadn't even met yet. How could I not want to be a part of her life? She felt like a piece of me, maybe the best piece. I glanced up at Linda's smiling face and nodded, tears welling up in my eyes and a goofy grin on my face. She could see she had me hooked. The allure was irresistible. "I can tell from your expression that you want to be involved in her life. We'll figure out exactly how as we go along. Finish your coffee, and then I'll take you home to meet her." The drive to Linda's house was silent, my mind racing and jumping from thought to thought. When we arrived at a lovely gated home in an upscale neighborhood and got out of the car, the front door opened and a small blonde whirlwind charged at her mother. "Mommy, I missed you. Is this the man from your wedding picture?" "Yes, sweetie, this is your daddy." Hearing myself called daddy nearly made my heart explode, and I had to blink away tears. "Mommy, why is Daddy crying? Is he sad?" "No, sweetheart. He's just so happy to see you that he can't help it. Now go say hello and show him inside." Sarah approached me a bit shyly and took my hand. "Hi, I'm Sarah. Would you like to see my room?" "Mommy said it's okay. Come on." "Hi, Sarah. I'm Barry, and I'd love to see your room." "No, silly, you're Daddy, not Barry." She led the way, pulling me along as Linda stood there, smiling with tears streaming down her face. Of course, Linda and I quickly rekindled our relationship and were married within the year. Sarah was Linda's chief bridesmaid, with a bit of assistance from Linda's mother. It's been 2 years since I became a stay-at-home dad, and I absolutely love it, even though most of the child rearing is handled by a nanny. Linda manages Benson's, but she'll soon need to take maternity leave as we're expecting another little Scott any day now. Am I happy? Absolutely. On a lighter note, 2 deaf men walk into a bar. One of them gestures that he'll get the drinks and heads to the bar. After ordering and reading the bill, he thinks it's excessively pricey. He asks the bartender in broken English why it's so expensive. The bartender points to the speakers and says it's because of the music. The man asks, "Rock and roll?" "No." "Jazz?" "No." "What then?" "Country and Western." "Oh." The man returns to his friend and explains that their next drink will be somewhere else. When his friend asks why, he explains about the music and points to the speakers. His friend asks, "Rock and roll?" "No." "Jazz?" "No." "What then?" "Some guy from Preston."